Welcome to Tea with Tanya. I'm your host, Tanya Ambrose, an average millennial navigating life as a maternal health professional, nonprofit founder, and grad student. Join me in the tea tasting room where we spill the tea on finding balance and promoting positive living while doing it all. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Tea with Tanya. Thank you for joining me here in the tea tasting room for another episode. I hope wherever you are listening to this podcast, you would have done something this week to make yourself proud. Okay? Because that is the goal. Do something each week to make yourself proud. Do it for you. Before we get into today's episode, I do want to share the tea that I am drinking this week. I will say, if you want a grad school update, I have been doing better. Like, I've been managing my time. I buckled down a bit. I can do better, but this week has been a lot. Like, I'm actually working for my paycheck this time around. So work has been busy. Work has been extremely busy, and the semester is starting to wind down. So of course, there's a lot more work that needs to be done. But other than that, I am getting the hang of it. I had to reach out to one of my professors, and I'm like, I'm not necessarily liking my grade in this class right now. Mind you, the grade right now is an A. I mean, it's a B, but it needs to be an A. But we'll talk about that another time. But I'm just not necessarily pleased with my grade. And it's not even necessarily about the grade. It's just there are some concepts that I'm not grasping the way I would like to. And I kind of, like, the overachiever me is not sitting well. So I reached out for help because, of course, when you're in school, when you're in grad school, your professors, they are here to facilitate your success and they have no issue. So I have scheduled some office time with my professor so I can see what is it about a particular concept that I'm not grasping or what I can do. What's an easier way for me to understand it. So I am proud of myself for doing that because on one hand, I'm like, oh no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go YouTube. I'm just going to go read the notes and go back over the lecture and see what I can do. But I'm here to succeed in grad school. And this class, there's a continuation of this class for the spring semester. So I need to make sure that I'm grasping everything now versus waiting until next semester to try to figure it out. I am not going to be doing that. So that's a little grad school update. Other than that, everything has been going well. I have been consistently drinking my dandelion tea because, it's essentially good for your liver health as well. And as you know, I am on this journey to becoming the boss or CEO of my health, as I'm encouraging you as well to do the same. So I have now incorporated dandelion tea into one of my tea routines because, I do have tea in the morning and in the evening because that's just how much I love tea, and the tea in the morning is different than the tea at night, So definitely, I have been drinking some dandelion tea, and I encourage you to get some as well because it helps to reduce water weight. If you're feeling bloated, that can help. And if you've been listening to this podcast, or if you're just joining, I am someone who I'm working on my digestive health to ensure that it is operating at its highest self. So anything that I can find that's going to help to reduce any sort of bloating or anything like that, I will gravitate to. So that's one of the benefits of dandelion. It reduces water weight. So if you're feeling bloated, that could help provide some sort of release because it acts as a diuretic and it helps to increase your urine output as well. It also promotes liver health. It helps to detoxify your liver and help with any skin and eye problems you may have. So again, another good benefit. It can also act as a natural coffee substitute. So if you are someone who's trying to maybe eliminate having to drink coffee, that's something that you can turn to, dandelion, because the plants are so dark and roasted, it produces that brown color, which is very, very close to coffee. So it can be enjoyed as a coffee substitute if you're trying to wean yourself from drinking too much coffee in a day. It can sometimes help with weight loss to an extent. So that's another benefit. And it may help to soothe any digestive ailments that you may have as well. It can be used to improve your appetite and relieve constipation, which those two are very big for me. TMI, but that's just the case. We're here in open book here in the tea tasting room. And it helps to prevent urinary tract infection. So, get yourself some dandelion tea because you just never know you know some of the benefits. It can be very beneficial to you, especially as you're on your health and wellness journey as well. And then the affirmation for this week, because this is going to be tied into today's episode. The affirmation for this week is I am strong no matter the weather. The season does not define me. So as we approach these cold winter days, I want you to understand that the I am strong no matter the weather. The season does not define me. That's something that we need to be acknowledging. The season is not going to define us this time around. So in today's episode, we're going to be diving into a topic that affects millions of people around the world, and that is called seasonal affective disorder, also known as SAD. So that abbreviation SAD, seasonal affective disorder, also known as SAD. I'm going to be talking about that today with an amazing guest. Because when you think about it, the days are getting shorter and the cold weather is starting to set in. You know, I am waking up when it's extremely dark, and then by the time I'm getting home, some days it's extremely dark as well, and I'm not ready. I've been living in the United States for 14 years now, and every state that I've lived in obviously would have experienced some extremely cold weather. I mean, I live in the South now, so it doesn't get as cold, but when you're coming from the islands, anything below 60 degrees is going to be cold. I'm sorry. But the days are getting shorter, and the cold weather is starting to set in, and many individuals, including myself, may find ourselves, grappling with various or different range of emotions, which can be challenging to navigate sometimes. But I do have an amazing guest who's here with us today, and an expert in the social work field, mental health field, and we're going to be talking about seasonal affective disorder. We're going to talk about the causes, the symptoms, and some strategies that you can use to combat this disorder as well. So if you're someone who have been feeling down during the months where it's just dark all around, or if you're just simply trying to find ways where you can cope with your seasonal affective disorder, or want to support your partner or any family member who's dealing with this is the episode for you. So stick around here in the tea tasting room as we get into talking about seasonal affective disorder. Yeah, welcome to the tea tasting room, as I like to call it here. Thanks for joining me on the podcast. It's a privilege to have you here with me today.
I'm so excited. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Thanks so much for having me on.
I'm good. Thank you. Before we get into today's episode, we're very nosy people here on the podcast. So tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started in this field, and what are some of your favorite things about being a social worker?
Yeah. So it kind of started from when I was kind of young. I was always like volunteering and things like that. I always liked really connecting with other people, and I'm a big animal person, and was always, doing sort of volunteer stuff. I foster and all those things. And I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And I was in high school, it was getting to be that time to, look at colleges, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I was just kind of flipping through, those big books they used to send us, before everything was online with all the majors and everything. So I was flipping through and looking, and I found something called human development. And it was about, child development and studying, women's studies and the psychology of like different things like psychology about different topics and things. And it really was fascinating. And I was reading through this major, and I'm like, wow, all of these classes sound so fascinating. It was like studying women's bodies and all these different things. So I was like, all right, let me just go and do that, because I have no idea what I want to do. And then, so in that major, I had a professor who was kind of talking to me, and I was, getting to be the time to like graduate. And I, again, had no idea what I wanted to do. And she was like, why don't you go and volunteer? My husband is a director of a nonprofit organization. Why don't you go and volunteer at his organization? So I did. I started volunteering there, and I loved it. And they ended up hiring me full time when I graduated. So I worked there for a few years with people who struggle with substance use. And I started meeting social workers that worked there. And I had never heard of social work before. And I was learning about their jobs and the different capacities that they could work in and the different populations. And I was like, oh, wow, this is so fascinating. I was really excited by it. So I decided to go back to graduate school. And so I went to like a generalist program, and that kind of, I kind of just fell into it, along the way, because I had no idea what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I extended my graduation. I graduated a little late because I studied abroad. And when I got home from studying abroad, one of my friends was working at a local outpatient, mental health community health center. And she was like, she knew I was looking for a job. So she's like, are you interested in working here? I'll put in a good word for you and like pass on your resume. And I was like, that would be great. I was doing all these interviews and everything. And so I got that job. So I worked there for 4 years, and I worked on the children's unit. So I was providing therapy to children between the ages of 5 and 19 and doing family therapy groups, things like that. So I really loved that. And then I moved. That was in New York. I moved to Colorado, and now I'm in a middle school and high school for the past, this is my 5th year, but I also started private practice. So now I'm working with adults. So yeah, it's kind of been a long road that's kind of just fallen into my lap, kind of.
No, and I love it. I love it. I love that, especially from what I'm hearing, is the volunteer work. And I think sometimes when you're in school or just as individuals, we don't often think about the importance of volunteering our time in our communities and how impactful or how the impact it can make in our lives. And so I love to hear that, you didn't necessarily know what you wanted to do at one point in time, but through your volunteer work, that led you to where you are now. And I'm pretty sure that you absolutely love what you do.
I do.
Yes, that's very important, because for me as well, I volunteered a lot growing up, and that's where I got most of my experience. So the job I have now is based on these experiences that I had volunteering, is why I'm able to enjoy the job that I have currently working in maternal and child health. So if you're listening out there, volunteering is very important. And Desiree also has a podcast, which she didn't mention.
Yes, I do.
She talks about, the importance of volunteering and where it can get you. So definitely you do want to check it out, but we'll talk about that later on. But I love to hear it. I just love seeing people find their passion without putting too much thinking into it,
Yeah, definitely.
It makes life easier. Well, we are here to talk about seasonal affective disorder, something that I didn't know existed until I moved to this beautiful country, the United States. I didn't know it was a thing because I grew up in the Caribbean, where we didn't necessarily experience all 4 seasons. It's always warm. Of course, in the Christmas time, it gets a little bit cooler, but not cool enough. You just put on like a little sweater in the evenings if you're going out. But more other than that, it's usually sunny all year round. So when I moved to the United States, and it started getting cold, because again, like I said, I grew up in the Caribbean. Make me hot. I will sweat every day. I have no issues with sweating. Like, let me melt at this point, And when living here and having to deal with the snow, granted, I've traveled, here in Canada and throughout other parts of the world where it has snowed or it gets cold, but you're only there for a short period of time. You're not actually living in that. So when you're there, you're on vacation, you're excited to see all of that, but then, you're going back home to your sunny island. Well, when I moved here, the waking up when it's dark, coming back home when it's dark, and then being inside most of the time while it's sunny, outside as well. I've been living here for 14 years now, and I still have not gotten used to it. Every time it gets cold, I get upset. I'm very irritated or irritable. I don't want to go outside. I'm already a homebody as it is. But when it gets cold, I do not want to leave to go. I don't even want to go to school. I don't want to go to work. I just want to be inside. I don't want to go to the grocery store. I do not want to do anything because, again, outside it's just too cold. And then leaving your house when it's dark versus when it's coming. I just find that my mood has been changing whenever that time comes. And if someone were to invite me outside and tell me, oh, let's go out, I'm like, it's cold. I'd rather not wear any clothes versus having to wear multiple layers of clothing just to keep you warm. Because for me, you can never regulate that temperature. When you're outside, okay, I'm too hot, but then if you take off a layer, you're too cold. So you can never find that balance. But
exactly. Yep. Me too.
You can never find that balance. But one thing I've come to learn is that seasonal affective disorder, it is a real thing. And I am still, while even talking to you, I'm still trying to figure out exactly what it is, how can one know if we have it? So, tell us a little bit about what exactly is seasonal affective disorder, or as we call it, SAD or SAD, and why is it important for us to understand that this condition does exist?
Yeah. So seasonal affective disorder, yes, appropriately named SAD, abbreviated SAD. So it comes with some sadness and feeling down during the winter months. And some of that sadness and feeling down is normal, right? Like you said, it's getting darker earlier. We wake up, it's dark. So a lot of that can be normal, but it's important to keep seasonal affective disorder in mind, especially if you live more in, some of the northern states or like Canada, things like that, the northern areas where it is much colder, it is much darker. It's not as much of an issue in the South, but it's important to know because it affects the American Psychiatric Association estimates that it affects around 5% of the US population. And it might not sound like a lot, but that's huge. And it's important to keep in mind because it does fall under the category of depression. And the symptoms can usually occur around, could be anywhere from like late September to early March. So that's a good chunk of time that you're kind of feeling that depression that maybe you haven't felt before. And it really does impact your life in a significant way.
That's important. 5%. I thought it would have been less. At least 1%. I was thinking 1%. To be quite honest with you.
That's a big number.
Yeah, and so you said that it essentially starts. It can start from around September to around March. When you think about that, that's a very long time. So
it's a long time.
What are some common signs and symptoms of SAD? Because for me, sometimes I'm thinking to myself, I'm being lazy. I don't want to go out today because I'm tired. Because I essentially do a lot. I'm in grad school. I work full time. I have a nonprofit organization. I have this podcast. Essentially, I do a lot. So I often attribute my not wanting to leave the house during those times as a result of me being tired because of all what I do, or because of me having a lazy day, or as I would call it, a self-care day, which in truth, we do need self-care days, don't get me wrong, but I think sometimes to me, I make excuses because any opportunity to not go outside during those months, I will make up an excuse. I will find the biggest lie I can tell. I don't like to lie, but when it comes to those months, I will find a lie if I have to Google or ask someone so that I'm not outside per se, and then when I'm inside now, it's a situation where I'm just down. It's not like I'm inside and I'm being happy and merry. I'm just inside. My attitude and my energy is a little bit low and somewhat negative because for some reason I'm in a funk. I can't tell you what puts me into a funk. It's just that around that time of year, I'm not motivated to do anything. I have to force myself. So what are some common signs and symptoms of SAD? And how can we essentially differentiate if we're having SAD or we're just feeling down? Like on a regular day, one day we're feeling down, we're up tomorrow, or, throughout that time. So is it a difference between feeling down or experiencing SAD?
Yeah, that's a really good point. A lot of us, it's completely normal to have good days, to have bad days, to have some days where you have low motivation. But seasonal affective disorder is more kind of persistent, and you're going to notice it kind of starting around that September, October time. And it's going to be persistent. So it's going to be, quite a few days. It's not just going to be like one day you have low motivation. It's going to be a consistent kind of thing over the days, over the weeks, over the months. So there's actually, if you want to get diagnosed for seasonal affective disorder, if you think that that's something that you're struggling with, definitely see your doctor, a psychiatrist, or a therapist. And there's actually a screening tool that they can use to diagnose, but be mindful and be aware, pay attention to your mood, your motivation, those kind of things. And I'm going to go over the common symptoms and just be aware of them. And maybe just, not to diagnose yourself, but to, if you really have concerns, and just know that it is a temporary thing. But if you do have concerns, to see a doctor, psychiatrist, or therapist and bring up those concerns, because there are treatments and things that you can do at home as well. So some of those things that you mentioned are some of the common symptoms. So this low motivation, this tiredness, fatigue, exhaustion, this feeling sluggish. So also change in sleeping patterns. So sleeping too much and having a hard time getting out of bed. Kind of what you mentioned too, that social withdrawal, kind of like that. You just want to kind of hibernate. Changing in your eating habits, eating too much or maybe eating too little. Maybe you don't have motivation to kind of eat or cook, things like that. Weight loss or weight gain, and restlessness, kind of agitation, feeling irritable, having anxiety, feeling depressed a lot of the time, feeling depressed for days on end, losing interest in activities that you once enjoyed. Again, like having that really low energy and kind of struggling, having difficulty concentrating, having difficulty being creative, kind of feeling hopeless. And then on the extreme end of sad is having thoughts of death or suicide. Because again, with this persistent mood and low motivation and feeling overtired, that's going to impact you over the course of, days, weeks, months. So on the extreme end, having those kind of thoughts. But those are some of the common symptoms. And it does depend on the person. So again, like with that eating too much or eating too little or sleeping too much or sleeping too little, it depends on the person. So be mindful of your typical routine and how it's looking different during this time.
And I will point out here, do not ignore those signs as well, because again, some days we have days where we feel off and we're down because we are human, things happen. We're not meant to be perfect or operating at our highest level each day. But like you said, pay attention to your normal routine, what your normal is like, so that when you're experiencing these symptoms now, you seek help from your care provider. Because I think sometimes, myself included, we ignore these symptoms thinking we can self-care it away, which again, nothing against that as well. But, you mentioned it is a part of depression. When we talk about seasonal affective disorder, it also is like an underline of depression as well. Because some of these symptoms that you mentioned are similar to depression as well.
Yes.
So it's very important that we're recognizing how we are throughout those months. But I want to know, what are some underlying causes of SAD? Like, why does it happen specifically only, well, in my opinion, only between September and, like, say, March? Like, what happens? Why are we just, granted, we have people who are battling depression throughout the year, and don't get me wrong, but some of us who may not have been legally or formally diagnosed with depression as we know it, why do we experience these symptoms or SAD during these months? Like, what's the underlying issue here?
Yeah, so there's a few really interesting factors that can contribute to SAD. So one is the decreased sunlight can lead to kind of that decreased vitamin D and decreased production of serotonin, which is known as our like happy chemical, right? So those productions are being decreased. Vitamin D is decreased. And also, so the serotonin affects like our mood, our eating habits, our sleeping habits, our vitamin D impacts so much. But this is also really interesting too, is that because it's darker more often and like you said, we're waking up, it's dark. We're getting home from work, it's dark. The darkness increases our melatonin production. So that can cause us to feel really sleepy and tired, fatigued, groggy, sluggish, that low motivation. So there's a few factors like that that are really interesting that can be caused just with the change in season and the decreased sunlight. And like you said, we're inside all day. Like we're all working inside or at school. And I don't know about you, but my building that I work in at the middle school and high school, I don't have windows in my office.
Me, same.
And yeah, so I'm not seeing sunlight at all during the day.
So how can we, because, especially when I'm thinking about going into the holiday season as well, we have individuals who it's time for one to celebrate and be with family. Sometimes that's not the case for everyone as well. So that's another thing. That's another asset again that we got to think about, individuals who may be grieving during that time. But how can we prepare for dealing with SAD, if that's even a thing? Because again, we prepare. Again, I'm thinking of the holiday time. We all everybody's excited about this Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever that you celebrate. But when you're someone who's dealing with SAD, again, the motivation is not there to even live. To keep it real, like it depends on how severe on the spectrum you are. So how can we essentially, especially those listening, living in parts of the world where you're experiencing the change of weather, how can we prepare for the onset of SAD if we can, especially if we've experienced it before but never did, or, it's new to us?
Yeah, I think there's definitely things that you can do. So there's definitely things that can help you prepare and things you can do to kind of address the seasonal affective disorder. So one thing I like to talk about is your environment. So really get your environment in order. If you know that you struggle with SAD, then kind of take that time before September, get your home in order. organize, do some things that around the home that you know that you're not going to have motivation for, home projects, whatever the case may be, that you're not going to have motivation for in the winter. Put lots of plants in your home, kind of liven it up, get lamps, different things that'll, get light around your home. There's other things that you can do to address SAD as well, like light therapy. So there's actually lamps. So you could either talk to your doctor. Some doctors will kind of prescribe that. And I know when I interned at a counseling center, they had a bunch of them. It was upstate New York. So we, had very little sun up there. So they actually lent them out that you could, borrow them, but you can order them on Amazon easily. You could order them online. They're light therapy lamps or light boxes. There's one called like Happy Light. So these are things that you can do. You can turn it on and sit in front of it for like 30 to 45 minutes a day. But definitely talk to your doctor, get particular instructions. Again, it's going to depend on where you are on that spectrum. If you're having the more severe SAD or kind of just impacting you a little bit, but you're noticing the mood change and things like that. So definitely talk to your doctor about that or order one online and kind of experiment with it. But that's really helpful. We talked about this, sticking to a routine. So with SAD, it's a big change in routine. You're sleeping, your eating habits, you're inside more and having that low motivation. So try to stick to a routine, try to eat healthy meals and try to stick to, getting up at the same time every day, stick to your normal time you get up, going to bed the same time every night. You could take naps during the day if you're feeling tired, but try to keep those naps to like 20, 30 minutes. Don't go over the 30 minutes because that's going to mess with like your kind of different REM cycle and kind of get you to be more tired. Sometimes, you've probably experienced where you nap too long and then you feel so exhausted and worse than when you took a nap. So try to keep it between the 20 and 30 minutes and try to get outside during the day if you can, because we're having such limited sunlight. If you have a lunch break, maybe go outside for a walk, maybe something like that. Or on the weekends, try to get out. Just getting that limited sunlight, is really hard. So trying to do that. Take your vitamins and your supplements, specifically the vitamin D. One. Again, consult with your doctor about that. If it's really on the extreme end of SAD and you're having just a really difficult time and you're having negative thoughts and things like that, some doctors will prescribe antidepressants temporarily just between those months of September and March or whatever the case may be for you. Again, everybody's different, but talk to your doctor about that because that may be a good temporary solution for those months that you're really struggling. And, see a therapist during that time to kind of talk about things. And it's just really, it can be really helpful. A therapist can have different specific tools for your particular situation. Yeah. Journaling can be really helpful. Mm-hmm. You're not going to want to do this because of the low motivation, but try to get in a regular physical activity routine. If you're really struggling with the motivation, like walks, yoga, Pilates, stretching, something, try to get in regular physical activity. If you could go to the gym, that would be really great. And then something that, a lot of people kind of don't think about too, but is kind of embrace the cozy season, kind of do things during the season that, you could really enjoy and that will make you feel good, make soups and teas and wear your fuzzy socks and your bathrobe and take nice warm baths and do things that can really relax you. And it's okay. And just give yourself that permission and that grace to know that, this is temporary. It's a few months out of the year. I'm not going to have my same levels of motivation. I'm not going to be as productive. I'm not going to be getting as much done as I want, but that's okay. Take the opportunity as a time to kind of slow down, really take care of yourself, see the doctor, see your therapist, take care of these kind of things. And but also maybe doing like seasonal things, like if you and your friends can get together and go to like the local coffee shop that's having like the seasonal drinks or whatever, try to enjoy the season. There's lots of seasonal activities, but try to get out of the house if you can. A lot of people that struggle with SAD, we talked about, they kind of withdraw, they kind of go into that hibernation, that social withdrawal. So try to, see your friends and family. And if you can't get out of the house to see them, maybe do like FaceTime calls, phone calls. Just try not to isolate yourself during this time. So there's lots of different things that you can do to kind of support yourself during this time and gain that support that you need.
And that's good. I love those, but I'm happy you mentioned embracing the coziness, because I think sometimes we fight against how we're feeling and thinking that it's an issue, but we can just embrace the coziness, like you said, and find ways to cope during that time. And you said sip on some teas. That's my favorite thing to do. But if you're listening, you definitely want to embrace where you are in that journey as well, because sometimes we cannot fight everything. And I think we spend too much time in our society trying to fight something and not accepting or acknowledging where we are, how we're feeling. Like we just try to progress and move forward, push our feelings to the side. And then before you know, things can end up being worse, I think, at least for me, that's what I realize. When I don't acknowledge my feelings or where I'm at, that's what happens for me. And I know you mentioned a lot about, of course, seeking a therapist or talking to our primary care provider. How can one, because I think, when we talk about mental health in today's society, it's still a taboo topic. Yes, we're having more conversations surrounding mental health as we should, but it's still a little bit taboo. And in different communities and different cultures, you don't even talk about your mental health at all. You just have to, you either suffer in silence, or if you do open up, you get looked down upon, you get shunned upon, and then that also sends you into a deeper depression or some sort of mental health issue. So how can one, in a sense, assess their mental health and determine if it's time for them to seek professional help as it relates to SAD? Because we're talking about SAD, yes, and then there are individuals who are already contemplating whether or not they even need a therapist for other issues in their life. And then you add seasonal affective disorder to this, trying to figure out why you're moody around this time of the month, or why you're moody for 6 months out of a year, whatever it may be. So how can an individual do a self-assessment as it relates to their mental health and determine that, okay, I need to go seek a therapist because I am really struggling with seasonal affective disorder and I don't even know how to cope. I know you mentioned some great coping skills or things that we can do during that time, but sometimes depending on where on the spectrum you are, you have no desire to do anything at all, but you do need to seek professional help. So what can one do to, I guess, get to the point of knowing and actually going to seek professional help?
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned, just being really aware and in tune with ourselves, because if you are pushing things aside, you're stuffing them down, it's going to come out in other ways and it's going to make things worse. So if you're finding in different areas of your life that you're really struggling with functioning, like you're having a really hard time at school, you're having a really hard time at work, you're having a really hard time getting out of bed, you're kind of having negative thoughts, just be aware of where you were before and where you are now. And if you're having trouble coping on your own, it's easier now than ever to get a therapist. I mean, my private practice is completely virtual. So I see all of my clients online. I mean, you don't even have to leave your home and, worry about the weather and parking and the darkness and that motivation. You could just turn on your computer, So it's easier now than ever. So I'd be really mindful, just have that kind of self-awareness. That's the first step in thinking like, I'm really struggling. I can't handle this on my own. I'm having the negative thoughts. I'm having a lot of trouble getting out of bed. I don't want to go to work. I don't want to go to school. And just pay attention, be mindful of how it's impacting your life and your functioning. And if you're doing kind of the things that I listed and it's not helping, then it's probably time to seek some extra support. And there's no shame in that. We all need extra support sometimes. We can't do it all on our own. So there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But just to be mindful of, your functioning, and the change in your habits can be a great indicator that, something's going on.
And then I want to talk about our relationship with our families or partners, individuals who are in our life. For someone who may be experiencing SAD, I imagine that can have a major impact on relationships. Not necessarily in 100% in a negative way, but when you're dealing with someone who, let's say 85% of the time they're down, how do you deal with that? And then there's some family members who may not even understand that SAD is a thing, or may not even understand why a family member may be sad, may be down. So how can we, what are some, I would say, advice or tips you can provide for those listening who may have family members who are experiencing SAD? Like, how can they support them in a good way?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say the very first thing is to familiarize yourself with SAD, read up on it, learn about it, educate yourself about it, see how it could be affecting your loved one in different ways, their habits, their motivation, and encourage them to, seek out support, professional support, because there's only so much that
Mm-hmm.
you can do. You're not a professional support, so you can't be kind of a therapist for them, but you can help them in different ways, but maybe, encourage them to see their doctor, encourage them to, see a therapist. Maybe you can get them, one of the light therapy lamps, something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
if somebody's really struggling with the motivation and things, helping around the house, maybe helping cook, healthy meals, things like that, asking them to go for a walk with you during the day. But there's only so much that you can do. You could definitely be a support for them, let them know you're there for them for whatever they need, if they want to talk, but to also be mindful, like take care of yourself too. You don't want to put yourself totally out there and where that impacts your own mental health. But there's a lot you can do to encourage them, invite them out to do things, go out, get a coffee, get a drink with you, go for the walk, go for a hike, things like that. And familiarize yourself with it, educate yourself on the different things that will help them. Maybe buy them a plant for their house kind of thing that will lighten up their house, or some lamps, just little things like that. And just let them know that you're there for them, I think would be really helpful.
Yeah, I agree. So we're talking about sad, and I'm thinking, I personally have not heard much conversation around this particular topic. We know it's there, but again, there are other mental health issues that would take the front road, or more in the public as it relates to, again, mental health. So what are some things, even if it's one thing, or what do you wish more people knew about this particular disorder? Because it is very real.
Yeah, it's very real and it's more common than we think. So,
Yeah.
one thing I would really like people to know is that it's something that impacts a lot of people, and just that it is a real thing. We talk about in the winter, we kind of slow down and people are like moody and over it, but this is a legitimate depressive disorder.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real thing that affects a lot of people. And it's not the same as the winter blues, right? The winter blues I like to talk about as being just like, you're kind of down a little bit in the winter. This is different. This is a depressive disorder that people have a really difficult time with, and it's legitimate and it's common, and you may be struggling with it. We don't, like you said, we don't talk about it a lot. It's kind of something that I think a lot of people want to brush under the rug, but it is something that I think we need to have more discussion about, because it impacts us so much and it impacts our loved ones so much. So yeah, just that, to just have that education around it and be familiar with it and let people know if you are struggling with it, I think is an important conversation starter.
Yeah, and there's no shame in experiencing this, because again, things happen. Imagine living in months where there's essentially no sunlight per se. Or as you said, you go to work in your office. There's no window. In my office, there's no window. Sometimes I forget we're actually there's actually an outside. Whenever whenever I go into that building to go to work, and I'm personally not ready for it's already started. Like when I'm waking up, it's already dark, which is fine. And then when I'm coming back, I'm like, okay, so it's getting a little bit dark. I am not ready for that. But like some of the tools and the things that you mentioned earlier, I'm starting to prepare. I'm working on embracing the coziness, the cozy feeling, because I'm gonna have a cup of tea every evening. I've been, how should I put it? I started getting candles. I was never a candle girl per se. I mean, I grew up with that with my mom, but when I had my home, I didn't think about getting candles. So that's another way of me now embracing that downside. So I look forward to getting up in the day and lighting my candles. I mean, it sounds very simple or minute and everything, but it does uplifts me in some way, shape, or form, because I know how I get when I am feeling down, or because I know I'm thinking about the winter season. It's not nothing else is stressing me out. I mean, of course, we have life stresses. Don't get me wrong, but for me, my focus just ends up being on, oh my goodness, it's gonna be cold. I gotta get this jacket. I gotta layer up. I have to. It's not my most favorite time of the year. So I'm now trying to be more mindful, because I wasn't always mindful. Like back then, I was just being this miserable girl, being upset, just being angry for no reason, or just didn't want to do anything at all during those months. I like when you said about, finding things that can work for you, embracing that cozy feeling. Because let me tell you, I've spent too much money in candles within the last couple of weeks, and it's but it's the thing now. Because when I find something that works, I become obsessed with it, because it's what's bringing me joy. It's what's kind of taking me out of that funky feeling as well. So it's all about you knowing who you are as a person and knowing what can possibly or potentially work for you. But I do want to ask, because I know, like I said, it is sad is I say symptom. I don't think that's the right word, but it's a
like
condition when, as it relates to, it can be close to depression. But are there any other conditions that coincide with that? Because you deal with people who may be experiencing or going through bipolar disorder as well. So are there any other mental health condition that can be coincide with SAD or no?
Yeah, I think that if you have a mental health condition, it might kind of exacerbate the SAD. But I definitely know that with seasonal affective disorder, that could definitely increase your anxiety. So definitely anxiety, I would say, is kind of coinciding with that.
That's interesting. No, you got me thinking here. No, Desiree, listen, I didn't ask you on the podcast to be diagnosing me. You be telling me what myself. But you got me thinking. I got to go ask my therapist on Monday now. What's going on here? Because I had Desiree on the podcast, and now she's telling me this is what. But definitely that's not the case. But is it something that's treatable? Because I know you mentioned about light therapy and these different journaling. Because I'm big on journaling. But is it something that is completely 100% treatable at all?
I don't know that it's 100% curable, but it's definitely manageable. It's definitely something that you can improve upon, definitely manage whether, and again, it depends on where on the spectrum you are with it. If it's more of those extreme cases, you might want medication and things like that, but it's definitely something that can be manageable. And it depends on the person. Maybe you are somebody that kind of has a light case of SAD and you do some of these things that, we talked about and suggested, and you're like, oh, I feel better. I'm kind of, I'm not struggling with this anymore. But I think it's definitely individual and depends on the person. I think for some people, it could be kind of quote unquote cured. But I think for the most part, you're going to be kind of managing those symptoms during this time. And it could definitely be greatly improved for sure if you're kind of implementing the things that we talked about.
So how can one manage it? I know you mentioned earlier about the different other coping strategies, but are there any other way an individual listening can know how to navigate or manage SAD?
I think a lot of what we talked about, but again, it's going to depend on the person. Everybody's so different. I would say if you're somebody that, just be in touch really with what helps you. If you're somebody that therapy really helps you, you love that support, that being validated, talking through things, that could be really helpful. If you're somebody that that exercise is really helpful for you, that it really boosts your mood and your motivation, then definitely implement more of that in your life. If you're somebody that getting outside is really helpful, going for hikes, things like that, it's just being in tune with what helps you and what supports you. And I would definitely tell people to check out the light therapy lamp, because that is going to be really, really helpful. And I've even had, friends and clients that have tried the light therapy, and it's really, really helpful for them.
Well, that's good. And as we get ready to wrap up, one more time, I do want to say, for those who may be listening, again, being hesitant to seek professional help, because again, anything that Desiree or I may have mentioned on this podcast is not medical advice. So you definitely want to make sure that you're seeking help from your primary care provider. We're just here to offer some sort of help, but not diagnose you or anything. I just want to put that disclaimer out here because, we need to ensure that you are seeking professional help. But what can you say, again, to those to encourage them to reach out to, a licensed clinical social worker like yourself or some other mental health professional, or how can they even engage in conversation with their primary care provider if they may suspect that they are dealing with seasonal affective disorder? Because again, it's not something that's been talked about a lot. And then when we're thinking about mental health, the first thing we always do is think about it from a negative aspect versus thinking that you're trying to get help. Because my philosophy is you cannot talk about wanting to be on your health and wellness journey and eliminate, your mental health or only just focus on your physical health. Because sometimes that's what we do in life. Oh, I'm going to be healthy. And then we just think about going to the gym or working out, and then we leave everything else out. Like we even leave the dentist out, going to the eye doctor. So when when you think about health, it should be a holistic approach. But one last time, what can you do to encourage them to really and truly reach out to a professional or whatever mental health professional, that way without having to feel embarrassed or ashamed to do that if they suspect they have SAD? Because again, like we've been saying throughout this episode, it is a real thing. And I know sometimes, again, everyone may not know how to figure out if they are dealing with it. And Desiree would have mentioned that throughout the episode, some signs and symptoms for you to look at to determine if you are actually experiencing SAD. But again, how can we encourage them to, if they get to a point where they are listening to this episode and they're looking at the symptoms and the signs that you would have mentioned, and they've ticked off at least, I'm going to say 5 or more, just offer some encouraging words to them to really get them to go seek professional help. Because again, it's not a bad thing. You're doing this for yourself because you want to be able to manage this disorder. You want to be able to cope. You want to be able to still enjoy the finer things that life may have to offer, even during these months from September to March, where it can be a little bit challenging. You may feel more down than you usually are, but you need to get that help just so you can be able to enjoy your life as best as you possibly can.
Yeah, absolutely. So many great points. And I would say if you're listening to this episode, our conversation, and this is resonating with you and you're thinking like, oh, I think this is something I'm struggling with, just know, like we said, it's common. A lot of people struggle with this. It doesn't mean that anything is wrong with you, but just know you don't have to suffer. It's a long chunk of time, though temporary for a majority of
Yes.
people. You don't have to suffer for that many months, September through March. There is support out there for you. There are ways to manage it. And I would say just kind of, check in with your doctor, get, like you said, that holistic health is so important. Making sure you're getting your physical every year, calling your doctor, letting them know your concerns, and maybe even going on Psychology Today and browsing different therapists in your area and seeing, they're going to say on their profile the kind of different things that they specialize in. So finding somebody that kind of specializes in seasonal affective disorder, specializes particularly in depression, and kind of reading those profiles and see if any of them resonate with you. And again, you don't even have to leave your house to see a therapist. So many therapists offer virtual options. It's so easy nowadays. And it's just know that you don't have to struggle. Support is out there. This is manageable, and there's nothing wrong with it. There's no shame in it. So many people are experiencing this same thing, and that you're not alone. And there's a lot of different things that you can do to improve your mental health during this time.
Thank you, Desiree. That was a very, very good way, I think, to end this episode talking about this topic. But before you go, tell us again where we can find you, because we know you have this amazing podcast, this amazing website that I've been on. So definitely, and this amazing newsletter where we get that, I forgot what that worksheet. But anyway, either way, definitely tell them where they can find you and maybe possibly even work along with you. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. So yes, I do have a podcast. So The Wellness Project with Des, you can find that anywhere you listen to podcasts. So I interview experts in the field of mental health and wellness, as well as people that come on and share their firsthand accounts with their mental health. So that's really great. There's so many actionable tools that you can use to improve your mental health and wellness. And it's really about that holistic wellness that we've been talking about. I do have a website, accordingtodes.com. And I have a bunch of blogs on there. You can find all the very detailed show notes for each of my guests on there for my podcast. And I do have an email list. So you can definitely sign up for that. And when you sign up for that, you can get your free weekly wellness checklist. And I am kind of changing that over now. So now I'm going to be offering strategies to manage stress. So stress reduction tools ebook. So you get one of those, and you'll always get updates on the different things that I'm offering. Probably the best place to find me is in my Facebook group. I'm in there every single day with mental health and wellness content. And it's a really great supportive community. So that's The Wellness Project with Des. And I also have an Etsy store where I offer a lot of different products that are kind of, positivity inspired. And there's a lot of cool things in there, like, stylish kind of shirts and things, but also bags and notebooks with all like kind of positive messages, which I love, are really fun and inspiring. And so those are probably the best places to find me. I do offer one-on-one coaching. And this holiday season, actually, I am offering, it's a limited group, but I am offering a support group. We're going to meet 3 times, once in November, once in December, and once in January. So I'm going to be offering that every year because the holiday season can be really challenging for people, a really difficult time. So if you're interested, you can definitely reach out to me to learn more about that. So yeah, definitely those are the kind of, you can find me all over. I'm all over social media. So TikTok, Instagram. So yeah, I look forward to connecting with you.
Yes, and I'll be sure to put all of that in the show notes because you have some good offerings going on, especially around this holiday season. That's definitely needed. That's a whole different conversation for another time.
Yes, it is.
But yes, well, thank you for joining me here in the tea tasting room. It's a pleasure and a privilege for you even agreeing to be on this podcast. I truly do appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate being here. It was a great conversation and one that's definitely very needed.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you. Bye. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Tea with Tanya. If you like this episode, be sure to share it with a friend. Don't forget to follow on Instagram at Tea with Tanya Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the weekly Tea Talk newsletter. And of course, rate on Apple or Spotify and subscribe wherever you listen. See you next time. I love you for listening.